Heather, we were chatting a little bit before this, and so I'm glad you shared your story because that nugget of that fitness background, I think, is going to make you such a relatable story for people that are listening. And when I found your page and I saw that you did public speaking coaching, like I said, I immediately thought, okay, if I can just get these coaches on their stories in front of a camera, maybe not on a stage yet, they're going
Mhm.
to sell and they're going to impact more lives. So first, thanks for hanging out with me and tell me a little bit about how you got into this.
Yes. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. So, I used to be afraid of public speaking. So, like you, I worked in broadcasting, and it's amazing how you can feel really comfortable behind a microphone. You're in a little booth, and 6,000 people are listening, but you can't see them. And you can feel totally fine. But what I discovered when I got into doing media was that I had a real fear of public speaking. I had a fear of being in front of people on stage and having them see the real me. I had worked as an actress. My degree is in theater. And so I'd been on stages in front of tons of people as someone else. But when it came to being seen, I had a lot of problems with it. And it would actually bother me so much that I would always lose an entire day with it hanging over my head, or I wouldn't sleep the night before, sometimes even longer. I would just was losing so much time to the anxiety of it. And I finally decided this can't continue. I've got to figure out how to get over this issue. But everything that I researched was unhelpful because it was all about just stand up straight and speak in a booming voice and make this much eye contact. And that didn't work for me because it just felt like such a facade. Like I was trying to externally do something and my internals were melting. And I just felt like people would see the disconnect there. And they would read that I was an imposter. So eventually, I just started looking for other sources. My dad was a counselor for 30 years, and I always joke that he raised me as a teenager with cognitive behavioral therapy. So I started there with a lot of tools from that. And then I just expanded and I drew upon my performance background and different areas of brain science and neuroscience and psychology and pulled them all together. I got over my own fear, and now that's what I do. I help other people get over their own fear of public speaking.
Really important thing that you mentioned was feeling confident in your job, but then not outside of that, right? Like you pitching you, presenting you is so different. And the story that I always like to share, similar with you, is when I was on TV, because that's what my clients will say. How are you like, how did you become confident on TV? Well, for me, it's a job, right? Like you just have to do it. You can't not
Mhm.
do it, right? But then when I started running my business, it was almost like I didn't know what to wear. Like I didn't know how to be me, which is weird because I've never had that issue, but it was like for TV, I had to look a certain way. I had to fit in this box. And then
Mhm.
after work, I was like, the punk rock girl at the show and this and that. And I was like, okay, well, now that I'm a business coach or a fitness coach, I have to look this certain way. And so for me, I had to find that confidence, right? And so I just think it's important that you say that because I'll have a call with somebody who's like, I've been doing sales my entire life. Okay, but then they can't sell their offer, right? It's the same thing. And I just think that when you're listening to this, understand that you're not hopeless, I promise. Like we're gonna make you feel confident at the end of
Yeah.
this hour, right? Like that's my goal is that everybody after this is like, all right, screw it. Give me my phone. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Like put my
Yeah.
face in front of it. Okay. So whether you are a public speaker now or you're brand new, we're going to make sure we touch on advanced and beginner topics, but we're going to start with those of you that are a little more timid with just getting your face on your phone, not even stepping on a stage yet, right? But you're struggling to connect. First, can you tell me how valuable that connection is with like face, eye versus just written or verbal?
Right. So let me start with something you said where it's so
Okay.
difficult to talk about. You can be good at your job, it's difficult to talk about it. And I want to reassure everyone listening that being good at your job and talking about your job are two completely different skills. And just because you can do one doesn't mean that you can necessarily do the other. And in fact, I would say, okay, you're great at your job. Can you do your job while you solve a Rubik's Cube? Because that is how complicated and effortful public speaking is. It's something that you have to learn and master, which you absolutely can. but you have to be able to then do this other thing that's so distracting and do your job. So if there's a little disconnect and there's some nervousness there for you, that completely makes sense. It's a totally different skill that you're just starting out on. So, okay, I said that, Taylor, and then I completely forgot what you wanted me to talk about. What was the question
Like,
you
where
asked
was
me?
I again?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally fine. Whenever we are thinking about connection points, just because
Mhm.
right now we're recording this in 2025 and everybody is a coach now for something. You're a coach, I'm a coach, everyone's a coach, right? And
Yes.
it's now so easy to become that, but it's also not that I think saturation is a bad thing, but so many people are hiding behind screens. And so I wanted you to kind of reiterate the value and how important it is to really share your voice and share your face and how that creates connection faster than just reading a post.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. And I can't believe I forgot it. But essentially, when people see you and they see you speaking, what they do is, yes, as you said, they feel a connection to you. But the main thing that I want to touch on is that you get credit for your ideas and who you are when you speak about it and when you're seen speaking about it. And it is the best way to show people who you are. Now, the fear that comes with it is that you may not be for somebody. And so, therefore, you're going to experience rejection by showing people who you are. But the people that do need you will never, ever see you unless you show them. So, it's so important for you to put yourself out there because that's how people are going to identify that you are their person, that you're the person that they're going to connect with. And yes, I mean, honestly, I don't think the written word can do what what a human voice can do. It's just there's no comparison in terms of making an emotional connection with an audience.
When I think about new coaches that are growing and they're struggling, right? If I'm just looking at the marketing side of their business, they get so caught up in reposting other coaches. And you
Mm,
just mentioned something that I loved the way you said that is when you speak it, you get credit for it. And it doesn't have to be, I really think that there's no unique ideas sometimes anymore because I feel like things are just everywhere all the time.
yeah.
But, so many coaches just fall back on reposting or whatever. And then now when people see your stuff, they're associating that person with the authority and not you.
Mhm.
And so many coaches might be saying the same thing. Weight loss, PCOS, PCOS, but they're gonna fall in love with you because of the way
Mhm.
that you present it. And I think that you're just missing, you're leaving so much on the table when you hide behind it. And I know it's scary, but we'll get into the repetition. But let's start about that. Let's talk about that, right? How do you teach somebody to just introduce the voice or their face
Yeah.
on a platform?
Yes. Well, one of the main things I want to point out is if this is you and you're not doing it, it probably doesn't feel good. You know that it should, and you know that you should be doing it because it's essential to your business, but you're not taking that step and it probably eats away at you. And so one of the things that you're going to feel when you start doing it is you may feel some fear and some embarrassment when you're doing it, but you're going to have a relief from I'm not doing the thing. I'm no longer living in the feeling that I'm not a person who can do this, which is a terrible place, which is not a very comfortable place to be. So what I would say is dial in your self-talk here. So everything that you teach your clients about fitness or the way that they're going to do their nutrition, good self-talk is going to be your best friend. So you have to be gentle with yourself. You have to understand that this is something new for you. It's something that you're learning. It's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel clunky, but none of that means that it's wrong or that there's something wrong with you. You have to be a little bit nervous, do it anyways, and understand that you can improve and that it's going to get better. And I would say wherever you are now, just do something that scares you a little bit. Like you don't have to go from I'm never showing my face to I'm doing an Instagram live where I'm totally not even preparing the questions that I'm going to answer. You can even just show yourself in motion without words. Start there. Like film a little reel of you moving around and then post that. And then or like lip syncing, post that. And then maybe just something that's not controversial. And then work your way up to that reel where you say, these people are wrong and here's what I think. Like you can just scaffold your way up to it. And as you do, you'll build resilience and you'll build skills that'll help you manage the discomfort of it. And I'll just, Oh, sorry. Well, Taylor, I wanted to say because I was a fitness instructor, I was for 5 years. And when COVID hit, my friend and I started posting workouts online for our friends. And this was before I started advertising my business online. So I it was pretty new to me, and you should see some of the first videos. They're like, "We're going to work out." So they were so awkward. So we would post it and we explode like we'd post like demo videos and explaining the workout, but people were still confused. So we were like, okay, maybe what we could do is we could just go live. We'll go live and we'll work out and people can follow along. And I'll tell you, those first few lives, I felt so exposed. I just felt like bad things were going to happen to me. People were going to criticize me. I was so when I watch them, I'm so wooden. It's hilarious. And then by the end of 2 years, we did this for people so that they could work out from home when gyms were open and closed, and it was just a huge mess. And then now it was not a problem for me. Then when I started my business, going live for me was not scary at all because I had all this experience. You have to remember that like I already had all the tools to be a great public speaker, and going live on Instagram still scared me. So I had to learn to manage that discomfort, and I learned to, and you absolutely can too.
And one thing that I will tell people is, and you can let me know your thoughts, is step one, if putting your face is like, whoa, that's too big of a step, I would just film like what's on your plate and then just talk through it, right? Like something where you're just getting used to your voice. Because I think so many people, and this is something that I can't relate to this struggle, but the whole I hate my voice. I don't like my voice. I do hear it a lot, but I've never had to work through that. So how do you work with your clients just to get over that?
Yeah. If you hate your voice, that's a sign to me that you're overly critical of yourself and or you're not speaking in your authentic voice. Because when you are grounded and you're speaking in your natural voice, first of all, it should be something that audiences truly connect to, is when we speak in our normal voice. But it's really easy to, I do this as well too. I can still hear it on broadcast sometimes, especially when I feel insecure. I haven't quite prepped my material properly. I get kind of nasally, and I hate when I hear myself talk that way. If you're speaking in your normal, natural voice, you should feel like that it's okay. But if you don't, maybe I would just examine. Is this something that is a bit of a pattern for you of being really hard on yourself? And one of the things that I recommend is when people are getting started with social media or anything to do with public speaking, is that you do want to look at what you do, you do want to review it, but you want to avoid what I call cringe watching, where yes, you're just like watching it and just hating on yourself. What I would suggest is just watch it with the intent of picking one thing that you want to improve, choose that thing, make your plan for improving it, and then leave yourself alone. Give yourself some freaking credit for doing something that scared you. And if you had to go out and you had to play pickup basketball and you'd never played basketball in your life, would you like it would be horrible. I'm going to say this. I'm sorry. I don't even know you, but I know for myself. Like it would be horrible.
Oh, I would
And
suck. No, we're on the same page. Yeah, we're
yes,
probably on the same team, sucking together, 100%.
hopefully we'd be on opposite teams, balance it out for the season. But I'm not going to think like, oh, this means that I don't have value or I'm not a fit person. I would say a lot of the skills I have don't translate to this area, but it's a skill that I could build if I want to. And you have to have the same mindset about public speaking and particularly about filming for social media. It is something that you will refine. You will realize that, like, if you tilt your chin down this slight amount, your eyes look bigger and you look better on camera, and you like that. So then you repeat it, or you notice that audiences like this thing you do. So you repeat that. Like for a year, all I did when I coached public speaking was I cut vegetables in my kitchen and talked to people because those reels got the best attention. And I was like forced into that by my audience because they all loved that the most out of anything that I did. So then I just kept doing it, right? So it's like you'll learn and you have to have some grace with yourself while you learn. And if you can't have grace with yourself, you're just making your job more difficult. And you're already dealing with hard things if you're a business owner. So just try to make things a little bit easier for you.
And it is hard because I always hear, the complaints of, I hate social media, this and that and the other. It's like, okay, well, I hear you, but you decided to grow an online business. And sadly, being a really good coach is just one part of that, right? Like the marketing is a really big part of that you have to learn how to
Mhm.
do really well. And first, it's articulating how you do and what you do it. And then it's putting your face on camera and showing the same thing, right? What you do and how you do it. And then maybe ultimately it is something like a podcast or a speaking event or whatever. But, you know, one big thing that I hear, and it's probably nerves, but the issue with beginners struggling to condense what they want to say.
Yeah. Okay, that one as well is that just also takes time. So if you one of the other things is that people will see a reel and they'll think that that reel was just filmed once. So is like one of the ones that's popular is like someone getting in their car. So they're slamming the door shut. This just happened. You can't believe it. That person slammed their car door 30 times. And you have to recognize that. And every time they did it, they refined their messaging. And so then they got better at saying it. But they were slamming that door a lot. Like
Do we
their
know
partner
this
is
from our
mad at them.
broadcast background or what? Because like
Yeah.
it just takes me back to the day where it's like, okay, open door, click seatbelt, get the camera. Like, do you know how many times I would click my seatbelt to get the
Yeah.
right, like, nat pop sound? Like, anyway, I think it's
Yeah.
funny because that's so funny to me that you said that. I've never articulated that on socials. It's like, yes, we tried a million times, but that one angle or hook that you like, I think people try to also mimic someone else's day 5,000 when it's their day 5 or 50.
Yes. And I will tell you, it is really competitive out there. They're like content creators now, especially when we had that TikTok scare, it was like so many amazing TikTokers came over to Instagram and now everything is like a mini movie. And it's incredible and I admire them and I'm not up to that level. And I can tell you that I'm not up to that level and I run a very healthy business. And I can be proud of the stuff that I put out and the way that I work with people. So you don't ever have to be day 5,000. You don't ever have to be the best of the best in those creative minds, but you do have to speak to people. And I wanted to say this to you, Taylor, because you mentioned a few times like the fear, they hate it, they don't want to do it. What a great opportunity. Because one of the things that I love about being a business owner is the person it turns me into because I'm forced to do things that make me uncomfortable. I'm forced to be the bigger person. I'm forced to grow. And so, 2 years into my business, I like this. When I used to work a 9 to 5, I did not like the person that I was or the person I was becoming. And now I do. And so, if this is a fear for you, this is an incredible opportunity for you to grow and to become stronger and see how resilient you actually are. And I would say, examine that fear. What are you actually afraid of? It might even be you are afraid you might attract clients who want to pay you because that honestly that stopped me for a long time when I was posting on social media because I was afraid that I would fail people. And then eventually I learned that I do not fail people. If someone comes into me and my program isn't good enough for them or they need more help, I will help them or I will refund them. So people will not be failed by me. And once I got that courage, it was so much easier to post because I actually wanted the second part of the process to happen.
I do an exercise and I didn't come up with the idea, but if you've not heard of the greatest fear inventory, right? It's an exercise that I have my clients do every now and then where you think about that bigger vision, right? That success, let's say 24 months out from now, and you write down all of the fears holding you back. Because at first people think, why would I be afraid to be successful?
Mhm.
But then it's like, I don't want my husband to think differently of me. I don't want to lose my friends. I don't know if I can manage the money. I don't know if what if then I'm responsible for paying people, right? Like it's things like that that come up. And so I'm so happy you said that. But at the end of the exercise, you basically rip up the paper and light it on fire. And it's fun. It's like a real
Mhm.
exercise. You don't have to, light anything on fire, but I would encourage you if you're listening, give yourself just some time with a cup of tea or whatever and think about that because there is no one who doesn't have a fear, right? Everyone has a fear. And sometimes you just haven't articulated that. And I think that once you're aware of the problem and the fear, you can solve it, right? That's half the problem.
Yeah.
And I love that reframe you gave about business because I agree. I mean, I think about my job in TV news and I would have never said I hated it until I was fired. Would have never said that.
Mhm.
I would have stayed in that job forever, but I look back and I'm like, man, I am just such a different person now, and more stress, but in a good way because it's my stress, right? So I love that you said that. Um, for the coaches listening that are maybe trying to get on stage or get those opportunities and speaking engagements, right? How do you go about maybe creating some kind of attention for that or getting your first speaking engagement?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it relates exactly to what we were just saying about about success, about being successful and attracting more opportunities. Because one of the best ways to get asked to speak or to be offered opportunities to be on the podcast is you have to show people who you are. You said, I asked you to be on this podcast because I found you on Instagram and I liked what you had to say. So that then this happens to me all the time, right? And I speak probably once a week, or I'm even doing another podcast tomorrow. Like this is how you do it is you show people who you are. And I've always personally had the opinion, and this actually came from the first business coach that I had, which was just share your value and don't hold anything back. Just show people what you have to offer and they'll still buy it from you because they'll want it in a big chunk. Like they'll want it in an order that makes sense. But every day I just post content that is here's something that I know that can help people. And if you continue to do that, if you can just show people how you help others. And I was listening to one of your other podcasts, and I think also transformational stories are an incredible way to do that. My client went from here to here. uh, that's a great way. And then just every time you speak or you're asked to speak, you have to talk about it. So you have to also be willing to share your success. So you have to, every time I get interviewed or every time I speak in an event, it goes on my LinkedIn. It's in my stories on Instagram because I want people to see me that way. Put up a web page, say, I do this. If you have specific talks you do, these are the topics that I speak on, or this is a little copy about what I speak, and then put reviews. So I just spoke for a group yesterday and they were great. We all loved each other. When they were following up with me today about payment, I just sent them this email saying, like, I would love for you to help me grow my business. Can you answer these two questions? What was your experience like having Heather, haha, me, as a speaker? And what would you say to someone considering hiring Heather? And it makes it simple for them when they just have to answer those questions. You can literally just copy paste that out of the email, put on your website. That's all you have to do. And when you show people that you have social proof that you're good at it and that you do it, trust me, people are looking, but you have to be waving your hand saying, I'm here, I do this.
Absolutely, I agree. And one thing that I tell people to do, I've always just been so scrappy with networking, right? Just putting myself in the right place at the right time. And if you're not actively attending events, they can be small events, but connecting, like if there's an event, you're like, man, I'd love to be a part of that. And maybe it's not the biggest stage ever, right? But something that you've looked at, you've attended, figure out who hosts that and offer to do anything for free. Offer to do a workshop on the side, right? Like that is easily how I've gotten pretty much all of my speaking engagements. I find out who I need to talk to.
Mhm,
I offer up some things. I'm like, I'll pay for it all. You don't have to pay for anything, but here's the value I can add, right? And I think that people are just everyone wants to be paid for stuff and like totally get it.
mhm,
But all you need to pay for, well, pay for yourself, but bring somebody who can like take photos, get some video of you. And that's
mhm,
all you really need is doing it one time, get yourself on stage, prove that you did it, talk about it, use it in your marketing, you're good to go. I think that we assume it has to be some big event. And so just starting small, right? And you mentioned the speaking too, like that goes with your coaching. If you're struggling to land more clients, again, and I'm looking at your story and every day I'm not seeing proof of your framework. I don't even mean social proof, but like you living what you're saying,
mhm,
right? Like it's going to make it hard. Again, it starts with getting on camera, right? And
mhm.
then
Yeah.
ultimately growing from there. So whenever you start an event, right? Let's talk about the people that are hosting events or because I host events several times a year, right? I would love to know when you get on stage, let's say you have a crowd, let's say you're speaking after lunch. People are kind of sleepy.
Mhm, mhm.
What do you do to kind of get the crowd hyped up? Any icebreakers you like? Any tips?
Yes. And I love that you said that because those are the things that you have to take into consideration is Are they going to be a little sleepy? Or what was the speaker like before me? Because I always tell you, there's always so much out of your control when you're public speaking. Like, what if the person who speaks before you goes and tells this story about their own tragedy and they have everybody crying? Like, then the audience is coming in a different space. So you have to be prepared for this. So one of the big things is just choice. What kind of energy do you want them to have? And then can you put that energy in your own body? So I emceed a breakfast, and it started at 7 a.m., which is quite early. And it was for a fundraiser for women athletes at my local university, women's sports. Passionate mind, very exciting. And I knew the energy that I wanted to bring in the crowd, which is that it was like motivating, excitement. And then also just this like, we're in this movement of women's sports. And I just, when I think about that, I can feel how that feels in my body. And I bring that on stage with me. And you have to realize that when you're the speaker, you have so much power and control over how the room is, more than you think. And so if you want the audience to be a certain way, be that way yourself and show them that this is going to happen. If you want them to get really excited, yes, actually, I like that you said, like, do you have an icebreaker? Call and response. Like, you can engage with them, absolutely. And I would say always, whenever I speak within a minute or two, I make a joke and I have a joke ready. So these can be stuff that you repeat. So you used it a few times, but you know that it works well. Feel free to use that. I often like situational humor. So something that we're all experiencing. One time I spoke at a women in mining conference and the room was so cold and it was all women in the audience. So I started by saying, I'm sorry about this temperature, the temperature of the room. It was set by a man. And I got a huge laugh. And it kind of sets the tone, right? For the event. So I would just say paying attention to what something you're communally experiencing and comment on it, and people will really enjoy that and they'll feel more connected to you.
I love that. And I think that's so important because as I plan events too, right? I have to think about that. I'm like, okay, this dude's high energy. I can't have back to back high energy. It's going to drain them before we even eat lunch. And so those are other things I won't get into, of course, but I was just curious because fortunately, anytime I've spoken, I've actually always gone after somebody that was very like research heavy.
Mhm.
And so I've kind of brought the energy, right? But I've never come after somebody yet where I'm like, oh man, that was high energy. Like that's me. I don't know, so
Mhm.
I'll figure that out when it crosses. But um, do's and don'ts.
Oh, hang on a sec. You froze for a second there. What was the do's and don'ts?
Wardrobe do's and
Oh,
don'ts. Yeah.
okay.
So, and I asked this question because I'm somebody that I love fashion and playing around. I clearly, as I'm sitting in sweatpants right now, I know you can totally tell, but I love playing around with like fun fits. However, a lot of what I love is not what I love in like a photograph, right? Like I know what I look good in on camera. And speaking of men, listen, men get the wrong angle and you look different. Like, there's not always women taking taking photos of me. So
Yes.
I'm just curious to know for you, like what advice would you give if somebody is either thinking about what to wear? Like, how do you think about that yourself?
Yes. Okay. So I, in terms of wardrobe, I think this is one of the things that people can get in their heads about. So this is actually something that you said right off the top. You said I didn't know how to dress anymore. And I want to just make sure everybody knows that this can also be a place where your fear will show up. So when I was working in theater, one of the last shows I did is I was in a production of Pride and Prejudice and I got to play Elizabeth Bennet, the lead character. It was like that was the dream role. It was amazing. So got to fall in love with Mr. Darcy every night. And I wore these big dresses, these big Regency dresses. And my hair is so flat and lacks volume. And so anytime we try to do my hair, I look like I had this tiny little like orange on top of this giant dress. And so we kept doing it and it wasn't working. And I found that I just couldn't stop thinking about it. Like I was just so, and I kept asking the director about it. And I kept trying new things. And I was so stressed about my hair. And the director came in to my dressing room, like took me alone. And she said, Heather, this is not about the hair. You're nervous because you care about this. And honestly, I was like, nope, you're an idiot. But then when I actually took some time to think about it, I was like, she's right. She's right. like I have to let this go and I have to just acknowledge that I may feel a little bit of discomfort about my hair. Now, what the reason I say this is because often I struggle to dress when I'm going to be in front of people because I all of a sudden it's like everything doesn't work, everything's not right, and sometimes you just have to understand that those feelings are coming up for you. It's nervousness related to the event, and just pick something that's fine and comfortable. So, in terms of wardrobe, I would say comfort is always huge. So you never want to be like, I would never wear something that's super tight on my stomach up in front of a stage. That would never make me feel comfortable. So you have to be comfortable. If you can, if it's something that makes you feel fabulous and you like, that's bonus points. And then the other thing I would say, especially for photographs, color is best. So don't wear what I'm wearing today. It's washing me out. You want to wear a pop of color. Even better, one of the best things that ever happened to me is I got a clothing sponsor. So I have a woman and she's amazing. Her name's Amy. She runs the dress co here in Saskatoon.
Shout out Amy.
But yes, I know she's amazing.
Shout
So
out.
I know. Everybody needs an Amy in their corner, and she gives me statement pieces to wear. So that because like you don't want to buy all these statement pieces to be in your wardrobe, because you're not going to wear them that often. And then, anyways, yeah, you want to wear pieces to wear all the time. Yeah, and so she'll just give me like one or two pieces for each like broadcast or big event that I do, and all I have to do is post on social media. So perhaps if this is something that you're doing a lot and if you build up your following, you can find somebody in your community who wants that kind of exposure because it has been incredible for me.
I've just noticed, again, as somebody that is not like self-conscious by any means. I just know that there are certain outfits that I think look great when I'm just hanging out with my friends. And those are not the same things that I want to wear on a stage, right? And I'm not even talking about the level of like casual, just in general. There are certain fits where I'm like, you look wider in that speaking, right? Or is the stage elevated? Are you with the people? How high up are you? Right? Like there's just certain things that are different. So I wanted to ask you that. But is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wish you could share for these coaches that are trying to grow their online businesses in a space that has a million freaking coaches and they're trying to stand out? Anything that's going to help them find their voice, find their personality, any exercises you do with new coaches or people that are new with public speaking that might be beneficial?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what really stuck out to me there is like that sensation or that feeling or that belief that there's a million people that are like them. And so it feels like they're entering into this space that's really crowded, but at the same time is that nobody else is you. And who you particularly are is part of your package. So you're not actually trying to become somebody else. So when you're public speaking, you're not trying to become what I mentioned in the beginning, which is like that cardboard cutout of that really corporate, rigid person. You're trying to just show people who you are, and you want to because that is part of your package. And there are people that are particularly going to feel more comfortable with you than anybody else. But you have to, as I said, you have to raise your hand and you have to tell them that you're here. And I would say, if you ever have that feeling like this space is really crowded, I would just start replacing it with that opposite belief of why not me? Or they may have heard this before, but they haven't heard it from me. And just saying that to yourself every single day or every single time you're trying to show up on social media. And I would say that this is an exercise that I do with people who are afraid of public speaking, which is listing out any limiting belief, which is any negative thought that you have about yourself or your experience, and then creating an opposite belief that's also true. So it can't be just like, but I'm amazing if you're not going to believe that, right? It can be, this is a challenge, but I've done challenging things before. So maybe that's a good exercise for people that are having trouble showing up. Why are you having trouble showing up? What beliefs are stopping you? What are those opposite beliefs? And then honestly, read those beliefs every single morning. I have some that I have about making money and I read them every little day, or about like business growth because I worry about burnout or overwhelm. And I'm training myself to not worry about those things and to be grateful for opportunities that come my way.
Repeating those, whether it's affirmations or beliefs or statements of gratitude, I think the everyday is so critical. Whether or not you're somebody that feels like that's a little cheesy or not, I'm telling you, like it is so critical because repeating those every day changes your thought pattern, right? And if you're not team you, no one else is going to be team you.
Yeah.
And in terms of the saturation, I always like to remind my coaches, your page is saturated because you're trying so desperately to absorb all of this business growth strategy or whatever, right?
Yes.
But their feed is not a million coaches like you. So if you do something that a majority of coaches don't do, they're going to be like, wow, okay, that's different, right? Like, I think that's important to remember too. Yes, there's a lot of coaches, but I promise you, your ideal client is not following a million of them. Like, you're
No.
going to stand out if you just show up.
Yeah, they're following the one coach that they like who has the cottage cheese recipes. And then you're posting your cottage cheese recipe that's a little different. It's going to show up on their feed and they're going to be like, I like this one better. I like the way that this one's different. And then they just follow two people. Like that's it. Yes.
The way that cottage cheese is routinely out at the grocery store is insane.
Well, it's having its moment, but I would just like to say when me and my friend we did our online, it was like our running joke for 2 years when we did it. It was called Unbroken with Heather and Grace. And Grace is a nutrition coach, and we used to talk about cottage cheese all the time. But unfortunately, we weren't influencers enough. And so now it's having its day. And I will say my favorite cottage cheese recipe is make scrambled eggs with it. So put
Yes,
a
every
couple eggs,
morning.
cottage cheese, so much
Every
better.
morning. I knew
Yes.
I liked you, Heather. I knew I
Yes.
liked you.
I'm yes.
Okay.
I'm
Shout
eating the
out
cottage
good
cheese too.
culture. That's the sponsorship I want if they listen to this, like shout out.
Yes.
I would love the amount of
Could you
good culture I have
imagine?
in my
You'd be so ripped. You'd be so ripped that people would be uncomfortable when they saw you.
So
Solving
listen, moral of
cottage.
the story, we
Yeah.
all need an Amy and get your face on camera. But seriously, um, Heather hosts tons of workshops, I think on a monthly basis. And I love that she also, they're $25 from what I can see, but I love that you give the proceeds to some nonprofit. And so that really kind of warms my heart. So I'm going to link Heather's information below if you want to follow her on Instagram, check her out, maybe attend a workshop. But ultimately the goal is to get you on camera so you can get out of your own
Yes.
damn way and grow the business.
Yes. Yes. You can absolutely do it. You can. Yeah.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Taylor.